Bain Capital India Chairperson Amit Chandra believes that learning, earning, and giving should not follow each other, but rather happen simultaneously during the course of life. He was a young MBA student studying in the US with scholarship funding in the 90s when he first started thinking about the purpose of wealth. He decided then that the moment he started earning money, no matter how little, he would dedicate a portion of it towards something philanthropic. Over the years, Chandra has not only climbed the leadership ranks in the banking and investing space, but has also become one of the most credible voices in philanthropy in India. He has co-founded the ATE Chandra Foundation along with his wife Archana, who is the CEO of the Jai Vakeel Foundation. Today's episode traces Chandra's success story and the valuable life lessons he's learned along the way. I'm Divya Shekhar and you're watching Leadership Mantras with Forbes India. Thank you so much for joining us on Leadership Mantras, Mr. Chandra.
Thank you, Divya. Pleasure to be here.
And I want to start with something that Rohini Nilekani always says. She talks about how Samaj, Sarkar and Bazaar have to work together in order to, get the desired economic and social impact. Now, you are someone who has been actively engaged with all three facets, and you have a day job, you have a full-time career at Bain, you are also hands-on with your social work and your philanthropy, and at the same time you've also been part of government committees and helping participating in all these regulatory discussions. How do you do all of it? I mean, everything has a lot of demands on your time. So how do you do that?
Yeah, Divya, that's a great question. I think I'm truly fortunate that one of the early lessons that I learned from one of my mentors, Hemendra Kothari, was that you need to, if you want to succeed as a leader, you need to make yourself, redundant or irrelevant. And the way you do that is by actually going out and hiring great people, right. People who are more competent than you, and that's actually a little difficult for most leaders to do, because we tend to be very insecure as human beings. Even if we hire good people, the moment we see them thrive, we begin to get a little bit worried that is our position at risk. But I think that principle has actually stuck with me, and when you actually take that principle to heart, it actually liberates you, allows you to do things which you otherwise would never have been able to do. When I came to the Bain platform and got it started in India, I was really fortunate. I hired rightly in the first few years. Today, if I look at the leadership team at Bain Capital, it's essentially all the folks who I hired in my first or second year of opening the platform. And again, as I built our Archana and my foundation, we were very clear that I didn't want to basically dominate doing all the work. I knew that would be self-limiting, and so we hired an incredible team, largely all women team. We have a couple of men to fill the diversity quota, but we have this really talented team, which allows us to then do work both at depth, at scale, that we otherwise would not have imagined.
That's amazing. And where do all these commitments leave you in terms of personal time?
Yeah.
I mean, what does work-life balance mean to you?
Yeah, I think I don't have work-life balance, to be frank with you. Work-life balance is illusionary to me. It's not to say that it's not something I aspire for. I do have a lot of personal interests. I really enjoy traveling, with my wife, and I enjoy a lot of time for self reflection, reading in particular, and I really enjoy spending time with my friends. But I think the commitments that I've had do land up, unfortunately, taking up a lot of the time, and this year in particular is a year when I was hoping I'd get to spend a lot of time with my daughter, because we're going to become empty nesters as she goes to college, but she landed up being really busy, and so it became difficult to do that. And so you realize that you're always kind of in this conflict, trying to find that balance and prioritize, and that's a constant struggle. It's a struggle I've not been able to win.
Right. I want to now take you back to the beginning. I want to sort of understand what Amit Chandra was like as a child. What was your childhood like, and has your childhood in any way shaped your experiences or the way you work or the way you take decisions as an adult in your professional life?
I think what I was really fortunate to have, other than a wonderful family, were two things: great friends. My friends, even from my childhood, are friends today. At every phase of my career, I've made great friendships, and I consider that a treasure that I hold very close to my heart. The second is investment in things which were non-academic. I think we as parents and as society put everyone on this terrible treadmill where everything is measured on academic success. I think I was really fortunate that very early on I started focusing on things which were non-academic. I wish I was focused more on sport. I did not, and that is one thing I always held as a regret. But I focused on a lot of general knowledge. I focused on debating, on elocutions. I used to love music. And if I look back and see what helped shape some of my success, it was actually all these things, including my ability to make friends. You realize that all these things are actually much more better partners, in the journey of life than just content investment is. Yeah.
And another interesting thing about your career is that these days we see a lot of youngsters believing that the only way to quickly progress in your career is to keep jumping jobs, and if we see your career trajectory after completing your engineering here at VGTI, you worked with L&T, and then you went to Boston to do your MBA, and then you were with L&T for some more time, and then you had this long career at DSP Merrill Lynch all through the 90s till the early 2000s, and then you set up the Mumbai India office here at Bain in 2008, and now it's your 15th year here. So how do you look at your career strategy, if we may call it, and these you have had long, stable, successful careers?
Yeah, I think for many of today's millennials, my career strategy can be summarized in one word: boring. I have generally, I would say, Divya, believed that, look, it takes a long time to both learn something meaningfully and to impact something in a meaningful way. If you are a grasshopper and you kind of just keep taking short bursts, you keep trying to run a marathon, you're never going to be able to run a marathon that way. If you want to really run a marathon, you need to run it the way marathoners do, and that's been my approach to building careers. That having been said, I do have one belief which is different from a few people who have looked at, who have spent one lifetime in an organization, which is, I do believe that life is a journey, and if you get too comfortable in doing just one thing, even if you're really successful at that, you don't build new muscle. I left DSP Merrill Lynch much against the advice of all my mentors from Hemendra onwards, right at the peak of being a banker. At that point of time, I was probably amongst the best bankers in the country. And I knew that if I left banking at that point of time, there was no way for me to predict whether I would be good at anything else that I would choose to do. But I felt that, banking had become too easy for me, and I needed to try a second innings of doing something else. I was clear I would give it a fair shot before calling it quits. And I don't think I've ever been as successful an investor as I have as a banker, but I have no regrets of having tried. And I think it's important, my learning is that it's important to kind of, have that perseverance and dig in for the long haul. and to treat life as much as a journey as a destination.
Right. You know, over the past few years, when we say the name Amit Chandra, more than banking or, you know, private equity, the word that comes to mind is philanthropist. You know, somewhere along the way, the seeds of you being a philanthropist or devoting a lot of not just money but also your time and personal, you know, personal time and effort into philanthropy, those seeds were sown somewhere along the way. So, and I read somewhere that it's a mixture of various diverse influences, like there was Vipassana and you know, there was you know, Chuck Feeney.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah.
how did these influences come together, and what were those early days like?
Yeah, I would say actually I started thinking a little bit about you know, the purpose of wealth when I was in the US. It was actually incredible. I was truly privileged that I was able to, you know, go to the US because of the largesse of others. I couldn't afford to go to the US by myself, and so it was scholarships that took me there.
This was the early 90s?
This was in 1991.
Right.
And so, you know, that thought I did not lose that thought that somebody paid for my education, someone I never knew paid for my education. When I was there, I got to see a very interesting side of society. Wherever you would go, college buildings, universities, hospitals, libraries, everything was built by philanthropy, right? Many of these philanthropists were first generation folks. And I actually, you know, there was something that inside me triggered and made me think about the purpose of wealth. And look, I was a poor student, barely managing to make two ends meet at that point of time. But when I came back to India and started my journey as a banker, I was really fortunate that you know, I got married early, and Archana, my better half, and I were on the same wavelength that, you know, we would begin our giving journey along with our life's journey. And so from the very first month of our marriage, we actually started seeding scholarships. You know, it wasn't a time when we were earning much. I remember I was making, between the two of us, we were making 25,000 rupees a month then. You would cut taxes out, and it was, you know, some 12 or 13,000 rupees. And, you know, so we could afford to stay as paying guests in a house somewhere in South Bombay. But we still started writing scholarships at that point of time. And I'm glad we did that, because it got us to think about life in a different perspective than this, what I feel is a warped notion that life should be led in, you know, learning, earning and giving. I'm very glad that, you know, I've always believed that all three have to go together. And so it began early for us, but there have been inflection points when we, you know, I felt that, you know, one needed to step it up. Success came early at DSP. You know, by the time I was 30, I was running investment banking at the country's largest investment bank, and I felt that I could do more. I felt something was missing, and so my first board was actually not a corporate board, was actually a not-for-profit. My second board was DSP.
Right.
And my third board was again Give India, you know, and both I chaired Akanksha, the first not-for-profit board I was in, and Give India, the third not-for-profit board I was on. But you know, I had the privilege of kind of, you know, getting engaged with the not-for-profit sector simultaneously with getting engaged with the corporate sector. And I then had the opportunity of joining the boards of some of India's largest organizations and some of India's largest trusts, all at the same time, and traveling the journey together. I remember there was a point of time in my mid-30s when I felt something was really missing, and I spoke to, you know, a couple of friends, Anu Aga and Vallabh Bansali, and they encouraged me to do Vipassana, and that, you know, helped me get some clarity about how I wanted to do things differently. And then there was a friend, you know, there's a good friend of mine, you know, Abhay Havaldar, who actually started General Atlantic Partners in India. Way back, GA was one of the first PE investors to come to India, and their first transaction in India was done by me in a company called Patni Computers. And so I got to know Abhay really well, and one day Abhay sent me a book and said, oh, you know, I think you'll like this book. And it was the story of Chuck Feeney. And it was incredible about a man who had given away all his wealth anonymously. And the scale of it was truly remarkable. And what he had achieved with that was truly remarkable. That got me thinking as well. You know, and there have been other influences as well. I mean, you know, spiritually, I think I started reading a lot about Indian philosophers. I read a lot about Guru Nanak, and that got me thinking about how to lead one's life as well. So I've been really fortunate to have had many influences.
In some of the conversations that we've had in the past, you've mentioned how maybe there is a need to tweak the way in which we measure philanthropy. You said it's not just about the quantum of wealth that someone gives away, it's also about what is the amount of wealth that they give away as a percentage of their net worth.
Yeah.
So, which that I feel will sort of radically change, you know, the way we, who our philanthropists are also in some sense. So, why is that important?
Yeah. You know, Divya, is very important. I personally feel is really important because this word philanthropy has unfortunately become a term that we reserve for people who write big checks. To me, this term is about someone who wants to make a difference to people around her or him. Okay, I personally feel that actually the best way that we can make a difference is actually with our time. Okay, and we actually have stopped valuing time, simply the ability of someone to care for another human being through their kindness and through their love is something that we have stopped valuing. We often value money a lot more than time, I think. So therefore, I think it becomes really important to recognize people's time commitment a lot more than people's money commitment. If we do want to measure it, I think we should measure it, you know, as what one gives of oneself, right? And that's why to me Chuck Feeney is a real inspiration. That's why to me Azim Premji is incredible inspiration, right? I think Bill Gates is also a great inspiration, and certainly for me one of my idols and icons is Jamshedji Tata, right? I mean, because all of these people have given pretty much everything of themselves.
Right. And at this point, what would your philanthropy be as a percentage of your net worth?
So, you know, Archana and I long ago decided that we will give as we go. And we decided that because, you know, when I reflected upon, you know, how I want to basically engage with the sector, I realized that if I actually die with a big bank balance, that would be the most stupid thing that could happen to me, right? And so we decided that most of our giving should happen during our lifetime, and our will should just take care of some residue which you know really happens because of some unfulfilled program and commitment that remains at that point of time. So we've been really practicing the giving while living principle, and I think it's been working well for us. So, you know, we kept aside long ago a little bit that we ever needed for as a nest egg, and then everything that we've been getting more or less in any given year, depending on the programs, because we do have programs that we support, but we try to give most of it away.
You've also been able to tap into this network of friends, you know, from time to time, and also convince them to not just give their time but also get involved with social causes in some way or the other. How do you manage to do that? How do you manage to sort of call up people and tell them that, you know, this is a cause that you should be invested in?
Yeah, by being shameless. No, I think that certainly helps a little bit. Look, you know, I think long ago I realized that one of my limitations is I'm not a visionary. I am much more of a executioner who, you know, learns as one goes and observes what works, what doesn't work, and if I figure out something works, I double down on it. Then I triple down on it, etc. I realized many years ago that, look, I didn't want to be in the business of giving. That, and what I mean by that is that a lot of our giving is done basically to kind of, just achieve a temporary objective, okay, alleviate someone's pain and suffering. I felt that the most important thing we need to do is go to the root cause and eliminate it. Now that requires often a much more long-term approach, okay, and it's a more difficult approach. But that also means that you need to then collaborate with two sets of people to make that happen. The first is the government, okay, and the second is you need to collaborate with other like-minded people, because these are social problems. Unlike, building a for-profit organization where, you can build 100 crore organization or 1,000 crore organization. Here you're trying to deal with really difficult issues, some of which have been embedded in society for centuries, right? To fight these issues, you need to properly resource yourself, right? And therefore building those coalitions becomes extremely important.
What's holding India back when it comes to, unleashing this philanthropic potential, so to say? And second part of the question is, what are the qualities that have held you in good stead when it comes to this?
I really don't know what holds people back. I wish I knew, because if I knew, we would really go about addressing this in a very systematic way. I think in general, there are a number of problems that plague our giving, okay. I think first of all, the number of people who give, the point you made is unfortunately much less than, should be the case. The second is the percentage that they give is actually much below the average for countries of similar wealth. The third, is that how they give is also very different, right? I mean, if you read the India Gives report, you'll realize that very little single digit of our giving goes to organized giving, right? And that means that how much that money travels lands up becoming a limitation. What some of us are trying to do is at least build platforms which will make it easier for people to do all this. Be it a giving platform, the investment we made in Give India over the years is an example of that, and it has ramped up really nicely now. It's a large platform. We are spending a lot of time with the government in building the social stock exchanges, which will be another platform. Knowledge platforms like in India Development Review is a good example. Center for Social Impact and Philanthropy is another, platform. So investing in all these platforms, which are ecosystem plays, I think becomes really important, because that will, to my mind, make it a little bit easier. It becomes a slightly more well-oiled machine. And so when people at least start experiencing the joy of giving, I think it will put them on a positive flywheel.
Right.
We need more people to experience that joy of giving.
And any update on the social stock exchange?
It's moving along actually nicely.
Right.
We have to look. It can be something really powerful. I think there are a few things that need to happen for it to really get to full potential. So right now we are still working on the framework of it. I mean, the exchanges are ready to go, in my view.
Okay.
I think the regulatory framework for it, the enabling framework for it to function to full potential, so that stakeholders, be it not-for-profits or be it donors, find that it's truly different from, the ability to write a check directly or to get discovery via alternative platforms. For that to basically happen, I think the enabling framework needs to change.
Right.
And I think that's where the focus is happening right now.
Right. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Chandra. It was wonderful speaking with you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much.
Thank you.
And to all our viewers, thank you for tuning in. This is Divya Shekhar. See you next time.